That Sunday morning at Hilltop General Hospital, I thought I'd seen the worst of my family until they smiled. I'm Megan Walsh, 32, fighting for my life in a sterile room in Billings, Montana, my body ravaged by poisoning after a family dinner. My parents stood beside my bed, their expressions cold lips curling into faint smiles. My brother, leaning against the wall, sneered. Even death got tired of her. Their words cut deeper than the pain coursing through me. I couldn't move or speak, but I heard every syllable, felt every betrayal. They believed it was over my heart. Monitor flatlined, a piercing silence filling the room. They exchanged relieved glances as if my death were their victory. Then a sound shattered the stillness. Beep. Beep. The monitor flickered back to life. My eyes snapped open, locking onto theirs. Shock replaced their smugness. I forced out the words, my voice hoarse but steady. Death passed me by, but justice won't. They froze, faces pale, realizing I'd seen their true nature. I didn't yet know why they wanted me gone, but at that moment I swore I'd find out. The truth was closer than I imagined, buried deep within our family's past. What had I done to make them hate me so much? The answer would change everything. Have you ever been betrayed by those closest to you? Share your story in the comments. What happened, where, and how did you fight back? Let's talk about loyalty and lies. I was 10 when I first glimpsed my family's true colors. A quiet girl growing up in Billings, Montana, in a modest ranch-style house where affection was unevenly rationed. My mother, Nancy Walsh, a retired pharmacist known for her precision, ruled our home with cool detachment, her sharp eyes rarely softening for me. My father, Ronald Walsh, a meticulous accountant, hid behind his ledgers, his tenderness reserved for numbers or someone else. My brother Kyle, 2 years younger, was their pride and joy, showered with praise for every minor triumph. My sister Cheryl, even as a teenager, carried herself like a weary housewife, drifting through our lives like a passing shadow. Their favoritism wasn't subtle. It was a wound I bore, carved deep by 2 moments that same year. The county spelling bee was my chance to shine. I'd spent weeks hunched over dictionaries, mastering words like perseverance and betrayal. Under the harsh lights of the community center, I spelled each word flawlessly, my heart swelling with pride. The crowd applauded as I clutched my first-place ribbon, but when I searched the audience, Nancy and Ronald were smiling not at me, but at Kyle, who had stumbled in the junior division. "He's so determined," my mother said, barely glancing at my trophy. My father patted Kyle's shoulder, calling his effort heroic, dismissing my victory altogether. Cheryl slouched in her seat, scrolling through her phone, offering only a half-hearted shrug. I stood alone, my triumph, hollow, the ribbon suddenly heavy in my hands. Later that year, I crashed my bike, the crack of my arm echoing in my ears. The pain was sharp, but the hospital wait hurt more. At Hilltop General, I sat in the ER alone, my arm throbbing beneath a temporary splint. Nancy and Ronald had rushed off to Kyle's soccer game, insisting he needs our support. My father's tone was firm, as though my injury were a minor inconvenience. My mother barely looked back, her purse swinging as she left. Cheryl stayed home, claiming an errand, leaving me with a nurse who pitied my loneliness. As the doctor set my cast, I stared at the ceiling, the ache in my chest outmatching the one in my arm. Why was Kyle's game worth more than my pain? Why did I disappear in their eyes? Those moments weren't just neglect. They were revelations. Nancy's icy compliments, Ronald's distracted nods, Kyle's smug smiles, Cheryl's silence. They built a wall between us. At 10, I couldn't name it, but I felt it, a darkness in their hearts, a reason I was pushed aside. I held that spelling bee ribbon in my cast-bound hand, vowing to prove myself. Their rejection wasn't my failure, it was theirs. That realization, born in childhood, became my armor, driving me to carve a life beyond their indifference. That quiet strength carried me forward, shaping the woman I would become. By the time I built my own life, I'd learned to fight for every step. And after years of being overlooked by my family, I carved my own path in Billings, Montana. Becoming an elementary school teacher wasn't just a career, it was my quiet rebellion. I needed to prove I could stand tall even if they refused to see me. College was my first real escape. I enrolled at Montana State University, surviving on scholarships and part-time work at a local bookstore. My parents didn't contribute a cent. My mother once called to say teaching was a dead-end path for someone like me. My father, forever buried in his numbers, scoffed that I'd never afford a decent life. My brother sent one email during my freshman year sneering, "You'll be babysitting brats for pennies." My sister settled into her comfortable world, didn't bother reaching out. Still, I pushed through, graduating with a degree in education, determined to make a difference. My first job at Lincoln Elementary was grueling. Long nights were spent grading papers, planning lessons, and comforting kids who reminded me of my younger self, overlooked and hungry for care. The pay barely covered rent and loans, but I loved it. Every smile from a student felt like a victory my family could never take away. Still, their voices echoed. At a rare family gathering, my mother smirked, calling me a glorified nanny. My father asked why I hadn't aimed higher like my brother's marketing career. My sister just sipped her wine, silent as ever. I met Michael Cole, my husband, at a school fundraiser. He was a tech entrepreneur, kind, grounded, everything my family wasn't. We fell fast, married within a year, and welcomed our daughter Nora soon after. Nora became my world, her laughter a reminder of why I kept going. To secure her future, I took out a $250,000 life insurance policy. It wasn't much, but it was my promise to protect her no matter what. My family's disdain only deepened. At Nora's first birthday, I invited them, hoping for a truce. My mother arrived late, complaining about the drive across town. My father glanced around my small apartment, muttering about my tiny paycheck. My brother laughed, saying Nora would never have the life his kids did. My sister stood aside, wearing a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. I swallowed my hurt, focusing on Nora's frosting-covered hands. Michael squeezed my shoulder and whispered that we were enough. But the rejection still burned, a reminder I'd never belong. I threw myself into work, taking extra duties, coaching the reading club, organizing field trips, tutoring after hours. My students' progress fueled me, but exhaustion crept in. Some nights I collapsed on the couch, Michael urging me to rest, but I couldn't stop. I had to prove I wasn't the failure they believed I was. My parents never visited my classroom or asked about my days. My brother bragged online about his big career, tagging me with a jab. Some of us dream bigger. My sister, now a mother herself, sent generic holiday cards, never mentioning my work or Nora. The loneliness grew heavier than I'd expected. I'd built a life I was proud of, yet it felt incomplete without family to share it. Michael and Nora were my anchors, but my family's judgment lingered like a shadow. I didn't realize their resentment ran deeper than I could imagine, or that my insurance policy had caught their attention in ways I never expected. Their words had cut me for years, but I'd always fought back with my own strength. Now something told me the fight was far from over. Years of doubt had hardened my heart, but nothing prepared me for the truth. When the doctors murmured about unusual symptoms, a chill rippled through me. I'm lying in a sterile bed at Hilltop General Hospital in Billings, Montana, my body frail, but my mind razor-sharp with suspicion. The family dinner that brought me here replayed in my mind, each detail soaked in unease. My parents, Nancy and Ronald, along with my brother Kyle, had uncovered a secret that ignited their greed. My $250,000 life insurance policy, mentioned casually at my daughter Nora's birthday party. To them, it was an unexpected fortune, fuel for a lavish retirement and a boost to Kyle's ambitions. They justified their plot with a truth I hadn't yet learned, that I wasn't their biological child, casting me as an outsider, a means to an end. Nancy, with her pharmacist's precision, obtained a rare, odorless toxin and carefully mixed it into the creamy casserole served at our oak dining table. Ronald, ever the methodical accountant, calculated the payout division, his pen scratching late into the night. Kyle, eager for his share, verified the policy details in a discreet call to the insurer, keeping his voice low so I wouldn't hear. My sister Cheryl overheard their whispered meetings in the living room, their tones sharp with intent. She knew the toxin's purpose but said nothing, paralyzed by fear of losing Ronald's financial support for her husband's failing business. She convinced herself my death would solve everything, avoiding my eyes as she passed the salt that night. Nancy urged me to take seconds, her smile stiff. Ronald dodged my questions about the dish fingers twitching against his napkin. Kyle smirked, raising his glass to family with a knowing glint. Hours later, my vision blurred, my pulse raced, and I woke in the hospital, their concerned faces perfectly staged. Dr. Karen Ross. My attending physician sensed something wrong. My symptoms, nausea, irregular heartbeat, didn't align with any natural illness. Behind the curtain, she leaned in, her tone hushed. "Megan, we're testing for deliberate poisoning. Stay alert." Her words lit a spark in me. I replayed the dinner, Nancy's insistence, Ronald's unease, Cheryl's silence. Nora, safe with a neighbor, was my only anchor, her innocent laughter, my reminder of what mattered. I didn't yet grasp the full scope of their betrayal, but one thing was certain: they wanted me gone. They believed I would break, that their secret would bury me. They were wrong. I'd survived their neglect as a child. Now I would survive their hatred as a woman. Their deceit had awakened a strength they'd never imagined. As the hospital grew quiet, a familiar voice pierced the fog. I'm clinging to life in Hilltop General Hospital, my body weak, but my resolve hardening. The doctor's warnings about unusual symptoms echoed in my mind, and I knew something sinister was unfolding. Then I heard him. Michael Cole, my husband, his voice steady yet urgent, calling my name from the hallway. Michael had been in Denver pitching his tech startup to investors when his assistant called about my collapse. He didn't hesitate. He chartered a private ambulance and made the 550-mile trip to Billings. Bursting into the ward, he found my parents, brother and sister lingering near my room, their faces caught between surprise and unease. My mother, Nancy, forced a smile, saying she was just checking in. My father, Ronald, muttered about hospital costs, avoiding Michael's gaze. My brother, Kyle, scoffed. "Didn't expect you to drop everything." My sister Cheryl stayed silent, her eyes fixed on the floor. Michael brushed past them, his focus entirely on me. He took my hand, promising to handle every expense and uncover the truth. Dr. Karen Ross. My attending physician pulled Michael aside, her expression grave. She introduced Dr. William Pierce, a toxicology specialist brought in to analyze my blood work. Dr. Pierce confirmed the worst, a rare synthetic toxin, was in my system. It was deliberate, he said quietly, careful not to alarm the staff. Michael's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking toward my family, who hovered just beyond earshot. He demanded every hospital record tied to my name, determined to uncover what had been done. While Dr. Ross arranged further tests, Michael combed through my medical files, his hands steady, though his breathing betrayed his fear. Deep in the archives, he found an old document, a faded form from my infancy, misfiled and forgotten. It listed me as adopted, my birth parents' names, redacted, signed by Nancy and Ronald Walsh. My heart froze. I'd never known. Michael hesitated, then showed me the paper, his voice low but unwavering. "Megan, you're adopted. They've known all along." The words hit like a tidal wave. My entire life, their coldness, their distance, suddenly made cruel sense. I wasn't their blood, and they'd treated me like a stranger. Tears burned my eyes, but I forced them back. I thought of Nora, my daughter, safe with a neighbor, and clung to her image to stay grounded. "Why didn't they tell me?" I whispered. Michael had no answer, only a fierce promise to protect me. The betrayal cut deeper than the poison in my veins. My parents had raised me, yet saw me as disposable. My brother's mockery, My sister's silence, it all fell into place. They'd built a wall around me, and I'd been too blind to see it. Michael refused to let me spiral. He contacted Detective Gloria Tate, a veteran investigator with the Billings Police Department known for her sharp instincts. She arrived quietly, notepad in hand, and listened as I recounted the dinner at my parents' house, the casserole, the strange tension. Her eyes narrowed when I described their relief after believing I might not survive. She agreed with Dr. Pierce's conclusion this was no accident. "We need to move carefully," she cautioned. "If they did this, they'll try to cover their tracks." Michael nodded, his hand still wrapped around mine. He swore he wouldn't leave my side no matter the cost. I felt shattered, the truth of my adoption tearing through everything I thought I knew. But the pain only strengthened me. My family had tried to erase me, convinced I'd never fight back. They were wrong. With Michael and Detective Tate beside me, I would expose every lie. I didn't yet know how deep their conspiracy ran, but I was ready to face it. Under the hospital's dim lights, we set a trap to unmask the truth. I'm still reeling from the shock of discovering I was adopted, my body healing, but my heart heavy with betrayal. In my room at Hilltop General Hospital in Billings, Montana, I sat beside my husband, Michael Cole, whose steady presence grounded me. We weren't alone. Detective Gloria Tate, notepad in hand, joined us along with Agent Andrew Foster, a federal investigator specializing in financial crimes. Together, we devised a plan to expose my family's dark motives. Detective Tate outlined the strategy. We would stage my transfer to a private recovery center, claiming my condition was unstable. The facility was a decoy, an empty building in Billings rigged with surveillance to record my family's next move. Michael handled logistics, his tech expertise ensuring every camera and wire functioned perfectly. Agent Foster suspected my parents and brother were targeting my life insurance, but he needed proof of their intent. Accepting their cruelty was painful, yet the memory of their cold smiles steeled my resolve. The bait was simple. A fake doctor introduced as Dr. Arthur Cole would oversee my transfer. In reality, he was Dr. Malcolm Lane, an undercover agent posing as a specialist. His job was to provide my family with false updates hinting that my condition was deteriorating, luring them to act. Michael warned me it was risky. My parents, Nancy and Ronald, and my brother Kyle were calculating. My sister Cheryl was the wild card. I hoped she might finally break her silence, but fear kept her loyal to them. We leaked news of the transfer through a hospital staff member, knowing it would reach my family. Sure enough, they arrived, feigning concern. Nancy clasped her hands, asking about my fragile state. Ronald grumbled about the cost of private care, his eyes shifting uneasily. Kyle leaned against the wall, smirking hope. "You're not milking this for attention." Cheryl stood in the back, pale and quiet, avoiding my gaze. I played weak, letting them believe I was fading, my voice barely a whisper. Dr. Lane, posing as Dr. Cole, met them in the hallway, his tone grave. He mentioned new complications, saying I required constant monitoring at the new facility. My parents exchanged glances, their relief barely hidden. Kyle asked questions about my prognosis, his casual tone betraying eagerness. Cheryl twisted her scarf, silent and uneasy. Detective Tate observed from a distance, noting every reaction. Agent Foster, monitoring the live feed, signaled that we were closing in. The transfer took place that evening. Michael stayed beside me, his hand gripping mine as we moved to the staged facility, a nondescript building on the outskirts of Billings. Hidden cameras captured everything as my family followed, pretending to check on me. Inside, Dr. Lane updated them, hinting that my condition was critical. Nancy pressed for details, her voice sharp yet controlled. Ronald asked about my insurance, claiming it was for estate planning. Kyle pushed further, inquiring whether I had signed any new documents. Cheryl lingered nearby, eyes filled with guilt but still silent. Back at the hospital, Detective Tate uncovered a lead, a pharmacy receipt under Nancy's name dated before the dinner when I fell ill. It wasn't enough for an arrest, but it tightened the noose. Agent Foster traced calls between Kyle and an unknown contact possibly tied to the toxin's source. Michael kept me grounded, reminding me of our daughter Nora safe with a trusted friend. Her safety gave me strength, though fear lingered. What if they tried again? What if Cheryl never spoke up? Cheryl's role became clearer after we intercepted a call. She had been pressured by Ronald to stay silent or risk losing financial support. Her apathy wasn't malice. It was fear. She had known about the toxin but kept quiet, hoping it would all blow over. I felt pity for her, but it didn't weaken my resolve. They had all betrayed me, and I needed the truth. As the trap tightened, my family grew reckless. Kyle slipped mentioning the payout in a hushed call to Ronald captured on audio. Nancy later visited the facility alone, probing Dr. Lane about my final days. Her composure cracked when he hinted at a possible recovery, her eyes narrowing in alarm. I watched the footage with Michael, my stomach twisting. These were the people who raised me, yet they wanted me gone. Fear trembled through me as I faced the depth of their greed. But with Michael, Tate, and Foster by my side, I found the strength to push forward. We had them cornered, and soon they would make a fatal mistake. I wasn't their victim anymore. I was their reckoning. With the evidence mounting, I prepared to confront my family's lies. On a quiet road outside Billings, justice caught them off guard. I'm still shaken but resolute, watching from a safe house as our trap snapped shut. My husband, Michael Cole, stood beside me, his hand steady on my shoulder. The sting we'd planned with Detective Gloria Tate and Agent Andrew Foster was unfolding, and my family, Nancy, Ronald, Kyle, and Cheryl, along with Dr. Malcolm Lane, were walking straight into it. Our plan had worked perfectly. After leaking word of my transfer to a recovery center, we monitored every move they made. They took the bait, convinced I was defenseless. Agent Foster's surveillance captured them scheming with Dr. Lane, who dropped his false identity as Dr. Arthur Cole. They intended to intercept my ambulance posing as medical staff to whisk me away to a supposed psychiatric facility. Their real goal was to ensure I never returned, so they could collect my life insurance. Michael had anticipated their desperation, and we were ready. As the ambulance drove down a deserted stretch of Highway 87, my family's van appeared, flashing forged medical credentials. Nancy led the approach, her voice calm but commanding, as she insisted I required specialized care. Ronald backed her up, waving documents labeling me unstable. Kyle, smug as ever, claimed it was for my own safety. Cheryl stood apart, her expression tight, saying nothing. Dr. Lane, dressed in scrubs, played along, emphasizing my delicate condition. What they didn't know was that the ambulance was empty, rigged with cameras, and shadowed by FBI agents in unmarked vehicles. At Agent Foster's signal, the trap closed. FBI cars surged forward, lights blazing surrounding the van. Officers swarmed, ordering my family and Dr. Lane to step out with their hands raised. Nancy's composure shattered, her voice rising as she demanded to know the charges. Ronald stammered, insisting it was all a misunderstanding. Kyle cursed, pointing fingers at everyone else. Cheryl froze, tears spilling as her silence finally broke. From the safe house, I watched the live feed, my heart pounding. Michael squeezed my hand, his eyes fixed on the screen. Detective Tate coordinated with Foster over radio, her tone sharp and controlled. The evidence was overwhelming: recorded calls, the pharmacy receipt under Nancy's name, and Kyle's careless mention of the payout. Dr. Lane, cornered and desperate, confessed to his role as their hired accomplice, paid to make sure the poison worked. The FBI cuffed them all, loading them into separate vehicles as the road fell silent once again. Cheryl's confession struck the deepest blow. In a holding room, questioned by Tate, she admitted she'd known about the plan from the beginning. She'd overheard Nancy and Ronald plotting, seen Kyle's eagerness, but stayed quiet out of fear. Her husband's business depended on Ronald's accounting firm, and she couldn't risk her family's security. "I didn't want you hurt," she whispered, voice trembling, but I didn't know how to stop them. Her words cut deeper than any betrayal. I'd hoped for one ally, one shred of loyalty, but Cheryl's cowardice left me hollow. Michael wrapped his arm around me, promising we'd rebuild. I thought of Nora, our daughter, safe and blissfully unaware her future my anchor. The pain of my family's greed burned, but I had survived. They'd mistaken adoption for weakness. Now, under the cold Montana sky, justice had found them. The arrests ended their lies, but my battle wasn't over. I'd lost the family I once knew, but I'd gained the strength to protect my own. Weeks later, in a crowded courtroom, I faced my family for the final time. I'm standing tall in Billings, Montana's county courthouse, my heart heavy, but unyielding. My husband, Michael Cole, sat beside me, his steady presence a quiet source of strength. The air was thick with tension as Nancy, Ronald, Kyle, Cheryl, and Dr. Malcolm Lane awaited judgment for their attempt to end my life. The trial unfolded like a wound laid bare. Agent Andrew Foster presented damning evidence. Intercepted calls, the pharmacy receipt linking Nancy to the toxin, and Dr. Lane's confession. Detective Gloria Tate testified about the staged ambulance operation, her voice composed as she described my family's calculated scheme. The prosecutor detailed their motive, my $250,000 life insurance policy, driven by greed, and my status as an adopted outsider. I gripped Michael's hand, the sting of that truth still sharp. Nancy sat rigid, her eyes cold, denying everything, until the recordings revealed her voice plotting my death. Ronald slumped, his accountant's precision useless against the proof. Kyle glared, his arrogance unraveling as the jury heard his callous remarks about the payout. Cheryl, my sister, avoided my gaze, her guilt etched into every line of her face. Dr. Lane, exposed as a career criminal, showed no remorse as his network of illegal contacts came to light. The jury deliberated only briefly. Nancy, Ronald, and Kyle each received 20 to 25 years for attempted murder, a sentence that mirrored the depth of their betrayal. Cheryl, charged with complicity through her silence, was given 5 years probation, spared prison, but not disgrace. Dr. Lane faced life without parole, his crimes tied to a broader web of corruption. When the gavel struck, I felt no triumph, only a hollow ache. These were the people who raised me, yet they'd valued money over my life. I stood to speak, my voice steady despite the pain. I trusted you, I said, meeting my parents' and siblings' eyes. You saw me as a stranger, but I'm stronger for it. I turned away, severing every tie. Their names became echoes of a past I'd finally outgrown. Michael rested a hand on my shoulder, whispering that Nora, our daughter, was waiting at home. Her future was my reason to keep moving forward. Back in our small Billings apartment, I channeled grief into purpose. With Michael's unwavering support, I founded Safe Haven, a nonprofit for victims of familial betrayal and poisoning. We offered counseling, legal aid, and awareness programs, transforming my ordeal into hope for others. At our first event, I addressed a small audience, my words raw but clear. Loyalty isn't owed, it's earned, I said. Greed destroys, but resilience rebuilds. I spoke of Nora's laughter grounding me, her innocent faith reminding me what family truly means. The work was grueling. Every story I heard echoed my own families shattered by selfishness, survivors struggling to rebuild. Yet with each person we helped, a part of me healed too. I had lost the family I was born into, but I'd built a new one with Michael, Nora, and the people we served. My past had shown me that greed blinds, but love endures. Months later, standing before another crowd, I held Nora's drawing of our family, a simple sketch of 3 stick figures holding hands. This, I told them, is what matters. Not wealth, not blood, but the bonds we choose. My family's betrayal had revealed the cost of greed. My survival proved the strength of perseverance. For every listener, I hoped my story would ignite courage to face their own pain, knowing that justice and love can still prevail.